Welcome to the All Out Leadership Podcast, hosted by Pastor Eric Lawson, where each episode is uniquely designed to help you live all out by bringing you practical leadership from a biblical perspective delivered in 10 minutes or less. So whether you're a business leader, serving in ministry, or simply looking to grow in your leadership, this podcast is for you. Before we dive into this week's topic, make sure to subscribe to the podcast and download the show notes at ericlawson.com/podcast. And while you're at it, feel free to share the content on social media. Now, let's join Pastor Eric for this week's conversation.
Welcome to another edition of the All Out Leadership Podcast. We're continuing in the book of Revelation. We're looking at the issue of longevity, and we see that feedback is a critical part of longevity. I want to recap, read Revelation chapter 2, verse 1. Jesus is addressing the first church, the church of Ephesus. He speaks to the angel, which is the messenger or pastor, or in our case, you might be the CEO, president of your company. You might be a manager leading a section of your organization, but Jesus has a message for you. He goes, I know your works, your labor, your patience, that you cannot bear with those who are evil. You've persevered and you have patience, and you have labored for my name's sake and have not become weary. Nevertheless, I have this against you, that you've left your first love. And so he gives them an action plan. Remember, therefore, from where you've fallen, repent and do the first works, or else I'll come to you quickly and remove your lampstand from its place. So the first thing in giving feedback is positive feedback. Jesus finds something to praise about all seven churches. Now, what I'm encouraged by, first of all, is that 5 of the 7 churches, he has to go on and give corrective feedback after the things that he praises. And I'm encouraged because some of these churches are actually pretty messed up. And here's what it tells me, and that is no matter how messed up you are, Jesus can still see the good things inside of you. And he starts with that. And so he praises them. Hey, you know, you're working hard. You got patience. You have a good high standard in terms of hating evil. Way to go. And here's what I found. As a high DC, we tend to see the negative over the positive. I can bypass 7 positives and see the one little ant, crawling across the floor. And if I'm not careful, I can get overly critical of our organization. I can get overly critical of myself, my team, our weekend experiences. And you might struggle with the same thing. And chances are, if you are the CEO, founder of your organization, you probably tend to be overly critical of your people, yourself, and your progress. So here's something I condition myself to do. We talked about surprise inspections last week, your management by walking around, your MBWA. I have to go into that with this mindset. I'm not looking for what's wrong. I'm looking for what's right. When I go looking for what's wrong, that's all I'm going to see. But when I go looking for what's right, I'm going to see a lot more good, and I would have missed it if I was just looking for what's wrong. Now, here's what always happens. When I'm looking for what's right, I will see what's wrong. I don't have to look for it. I am going to see it simply by looking for what's right. But just that little shift in how I approach it makes a huge difference on the outcome. Now, what we use here at Element Church are several different methods of providing feedback. You can learn and take, any of these. You're probably already doing a lot of these. Maybe these will inspire you to maybe tweak some of yours or just be a good refresher. Here's things that have helped us. First of all, we have what's just we call real-time coaching. There's a great book by David Dodson. It's called The Manager's Handbook. I think it's a must-read for anybody leading an organization, definitely anybody in a managerial position and higher. It's a must-read here on our staff for anybody that's leading a department, and it's called The Manager's Handbook. He has a whole section in there called IPF, which is just instant performance feedback. When you watch a great football team, basketball team, anybody who's going to win, you'll always see the coach on the sidelines, and they are coaching in real time. They don't wait to get to the locker room to give all their feedback. Now, they definitely got a lot of feedback for the locker room, but they're coaching in real time. And so as a leader, it's important that you're just providing instant feedback along the way. Now, most instant feedback, I try to keep it on the positive. Hey, man, that was great. Hey, the way you handled that, way to go. The way you diffused that upset person. Man, that was outstanding. Way to go. And then when it's a little bit smaller tweaks, I provide that also sometimes in real-time feedback. Then I highly encourage you, make sure you're having one-on-one meetings with your appropriate reporting line. So for me, I have one-on-ones, and that is with my executive team, and I'm meeting regularly with them one-on-one. And I have an agenda for that, and that's for a different meeting in the future. My executive team with their leadership team, they have bi-weekly one-on-ones, and they're going through a set agenda as well. And that's where we can provide a lot more of the bigger macro coaching concepts and conversations in those one-on-ones. I prefer to praise in public and correct in private whenever possible. Praise in public, correct in private. And then little things that we do that help provide feedback is we do a monthly GEM award. GEM is an acronym for Going the Extra Mile. And so we actually let all our staff vote. And so our administrative office will send out an email to all the staff. Hey, time to nominate, monthly GEM awards. And so when they're nominating other staff members, they have to give the reason why. Give us the little story, give us the snippet of why you're nominating them for going the extra mile. And then in our monthly staff chapels or our monthly staff meeting, we read out all these different nominees. We read out what was highlighted about them. So there might be 20 quick little stories about different staff members where all these staff are being celebrated and what it was that they did that was the extra mile. And then we're going to announce the winner. We actually have an independent leadership team that picks and selects that. It's not our executive team, so that it removes any partial bias. And so it's a team of our leaders, and each department is cross-sectionally represented, and they get to, as a get together, go through the best of those and pick out the nominees. And then they get an award. They get a gift certificate. Then we have, it's kind of our trimester every 4 months or so. We have a Team Excellence Award. We use OKRs. We've talked about that here on this podcast. And that is objectives by key results. And so when we're going through our projects as teams, we're working on the macro goals. There is an excellence award for the team that participated the best, that produced the greatest results. And there's different things that we're kind of rating inside of that. But every 4 months, we're going to highlight the excellence award with the teams. And then that whole team gets a staff lunch with their executive pastor. And that's just a way to highlight that. Remember, people repeat what you reward. People repeat what you reward. Every 6 months, our staff will do what's a mini performance review. There's actually a template that we use that we've taken from other companies and organizations, and we modify it and customize it for what works for us as a church. We go through our value statements. We're evaluating emotional intelligence, leadership, results, communication skills, people development. And so there's some other things. But it's a pretty fast way to have your peers, those that you're leading, and then those above you, and then yourself, to kind of just rate how do you think you're performing. And then you're going to sit down with your leader, and they're going to go through that. And the great thing is there's always more you're doing right than you're doing wrong. And it's a great way to get the positive feedback and at the same time, get some personal areas that you can improve. Out of that, what we're going to do is often we create IDPs, which is an individual development plan. And that's an area where we can go, let's just focus on 1, 2, 3 areas over the next year that we're just going to really put extra focus. We're going to invest into you, resource you, coach you to help you grow in this specific area. And then that's another great area where people are getting feedback. Something new that we've added this last year that has just been excellent in helping us get feedback is every new employee at 30 days gets an independent interview with our HR department, and they have a list of set questions that they go through. That employee is interviewed at 30 and then at 60 and then at 90 days, and then they're going to be interviewed once a year. Every staff member now with our HR department goes through a 1-year interview. So if they've been here 3 years, every year you're going to get that same interview. And there's certain things that we're asking, like their overall satisfaction and what do you find most challenging inside of your job. But my 2 favorite questions we ask that helped me see the most is this. Who are the 3 most difficult people you have to work with and why? Wow, I love that. I get so much stuff. And often it confirms what I've been telling my executive team intuitively. And then sometimes they argue with me. And then I get that piece of paper and I go, see, this is exactly what I was talking about. All you CEOs, you know exactly what I'm talking about with your team. This is a game changer. You need it. Then here's another great thing. Who are your 3 favorite people to work with and why? So all my executive team from the HR will get an analysis done on all those reviews, and they will get the feedback with comments highlighting this, what they should be focused on. And then there's an expectation that there's a follow-up meeting with that staff member or their leader to address whatever challenges they might be facing. And it's just been such a great way to provide feedback. So highly recommend that you use this tool. And then we do a biannual 360 feedback. Many of you are familiar with that. That is a much more deeper, exhaustive feedback, goes much deeper into the organization where people can provide feedback. And then we use our external coach, Coach Duke Matlock, to meet with each one of those members that had a 360. They go through it. It's about an hour meeting, unpack it. And then there's a lot of great feedback that comes out of that. So we put a big investment into that 360. We only do about 3 or 4 of those every quarter because we don't want to overwhelm the team with just sitting around doing feedback reports. But 2 to 3, 4, that is a great pace where you can really get a lot of your team through a 360 about every 2 years. All right, hopefully that was helpful on feedback. And next week, we're going to see what are the other things that Jesus did after he found what was positive. What did he do next?
Thank you for joining us on the All Out Leadership Podcast. We hope you gained new biblical insight that challenged you to grow in your leadership. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, we would love your help in getting the content out farther. You can help by subscribing to the podcast at ericlawson.com/podcast and telling others about it. Next week, Pastor Eric will be back with another episode. So until then, we hope you have a great week being an all-out leader.